Hey everybody, it's Mental Health on the Mic. We are back. I'm Bennett,
And I'm Lorraine.
and we're here with my very good friend Sam, who's joining us this week. Sam, welcome to Mental Health on the Mic.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you. If you could tell us who you are and how you know me and all that.
Okay. I'm Sam. I went to the same school as Bennett. That's how we know each other. I think what Bennett and Lorraine are doing is awesome, and I'm glad they're bringing attention to such an important discussion.
Well, we're so glad you're here,
Thank
and that
you.
means a lot. That really does. I graduated from high school there in 2019. You're still there in grade 10, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep.
And Lorraine, you're in 11th grade in a different school.
Correct. hmm
So I think what I want to do is I want to have a discussion about high school in terms of, me having already been through it, you guys still kind of in the middle of it, just
Right.
kind of our overall experiences, because I think it could be really interesting. Like you guys could talk about what you're currently experiencing. I can talk about what I have previously experienced, and then together kind of mesh all of that and see what we can come up with. And I really want to all come back to mental health, of course, and what mental health challenges can look like in high school. So, Sam, first off, whether we're talking about high school or really just anybody at any age just living in the world, I mean, I'd love to hear your take. Why do you think that talking about mental health is important?
Um, I think that issues surrounding mental health have always been important, but with the advent of the internet and the increase of social media use in our society has kind of created an echo chamber and just a way that good things can happen and a way that really bad things can happen. And I'm not entirely sure the people who created this technology, um, be it the iPhone, uh, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, World Wide Web, whether they intended it for it to be this way. But as we're all now so interconnected, I think it's more important than ever to discuss it.
I feel like it's probably ingrained in the culture of high school, right? I mean, it's like because everybody's following each other. You go to school with these people. You see them uh, when you go to school, and then it's like you see them all the time because you go home. They post things. You see them on the weekend, what they're up to, and then it's like you have that kind of back and forth between talking about what happened in school and talking about what happened on Instagram or happened on Snapchat. I think it's really, really an interesting situation. And high school, I feel like it's the ultimate arena, I would say, for pressure. You got everybody in one place, and there's so many areas from the school itself, academics, to I mean social scenarios, and then it's like the time when you're kind of figuring out who you are, and still in life. I mean, I'm not there, but I'm still figuring out who I am, and like the getting into college, it's a whole new level. Lorraine, you talk about that a lot on the show because you're in the process of thinking about
Yeah.
colleges, and
Yeah.
so I'm curious. You guys are in the same boat here. You're both Lorraine 11th grade, Sam 10th grade. I mean, whoever wants to go first, what are the main things, whether you want to list one or a few, that really cause you the most stress when you go to school?
I think for me, it's I think for me it's always been academic. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself in every class that I take. And in some ways it's good because I deeply care about, how I perform and how I do. But I think that creates the most stress and pressure for me every day is like walking into that building and having this high expectation for myself on how I perform. Um and it's more of like a self-inflicted stress and pressure. I think no one else is really doing it except for me.
Hmm,
So it's always been my like center point with that.
gotcha. And Sam, what about you?
Um, it used to be that way for me, um, but I've worked over time. Be, well, I think regarding stuff in school, I pride myself on being somewhat self-aware of how I'm feeling. So I took note of a while back that the stress over academics, and I really tried to kind of quell that. And whenever there's an exam or a test, I might get nervous or stressed, but I do have the understanding in the back of my mind, that it'll be over in a day, and it doesn't really, life will go on,
Mm.
um, either way.
Hmm.
Um, I think what really gives me the stress though is where do I go from here, right?
Mm.
I I I tend to be an overthinker. I think too much. Um, and it's, I work hard in high school. That then, what do I make it into a good college? Um, um, where do I go to college, study there? Where do I go from there? It's all happening so quickly. So the feeling of being unsure is what gives me that dose of stress.
Yeah, I'm curious. Lorraine 11th. I mean, that's the prime year I think for thinking about college, and it's often the hardest year. But I mean, in 10th grade, did they talk to you guys about that a lot? Or is it something you're thinking about a lot, or is it still a little early as far as thinking about college?
Um, we kind of start the process,
Mm.
discussing what it's going to look like, and kind of the prerequisites, um, and yeah, we started the process with the college department. They'll come and talk with us about it, and teachers will bring it up, but we see it all around us with the seniors, with the juniors, with friends outside of school. And so it's really an environment, where we've already been born into.
Well, I think both of you guys can answer this. I mean, from what you've seen from your older peers, do they seem excited? Do they seem stressed? Is it a combination? What are you observing around you?
Um, it's funny. I was in physics one day and I saw like um this girl who's a senior, she had her laptop open and it was on like Common App, which is like a program where you submit and your application to different colleges. And she was just like, she had her list of colleges on one side and like just stuff on her computer about it. And I was like, how's that going? Like I asked her, I was like, how is all that? Like how are you feeling about it? Like, and she was like, yeah, I'm submitting things and I'm waiting for results. And she said it was scary. And um I think that's a really big and um big and stressful time for all of them because they're kind of putting themselves out there and they're waiting for that response of like, oh, am I accepted? Do they like me? Or, oh no, I didn't make the mark. So yeah, that was an
Mm.
interesting experience on my part. But for the most part, I don't really see a lot of it. I don't think I hear anyone talking really about it. I think they're just kind of doing it in their own little world. I don't really see much of it around me.
Yeah. And Sam, what about you?
I don't see a ton of it, like Lorraine said, but it's funny. I have a teacher, who's been teaching for many years, and he was pre PhD, and he says that one of the things he sees with juniors and seniors is that they do all this talking about college. I can't wait to get out of here. Can't wait to go to college. But then at the very end, when it's senior farewell dinner, or whatever ritual a given high school might have, they get scared, and there's this fear they have, because for the first time, the amount of order in your life is it's becoming more up to you, and that there's less structure to it, and it's the kind of the first step into the real world, and it's scary to them. And while I can't put myself in their shoes because I'm not there yet, I can certainly try to understand what he's getting at. But for the most part, I think that people do try to handle it in their own worlds. Also, like my mom is She's training to become a college advisor.
Ooh.
So there are things, she has told me, and upon thinking about it, I really see the truth in it, that we all buy into these preconceived notions of what college is, right? And your how good a job you get has to do with how good a college you go to, and if your grades aren't good in college, then you can't get this job, or you won't be able to go into this field. But the reality is that you can go to any college as long as it's functioning. And if you get a decent education, which for the most part you are responsible for,
Hmm. Yeah.
you have the tools to do whatever you need to do, whatever you want to do.
Hmm.
Man, that was so well put. I'm like, I could see you as a college advisor now. I'm like, man, that was Lorraine. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, you're right there with them. I mean,
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like there's too much hype and stress over the name of the school. Like anyone like across the country, if you ask them, name 5 colleges in the United States, and they'd probably name, you'll hear the same names come up over and over again. And there's a reason for that, which is annoying because yeah, they're great schools, but there's hundreds of other schools that are literally the exact amount of greatness to them.
Harvard,
So
MIT.
yeah,
yeah, there you go.
Duke.
Like they'll say the same things. UCLA, and then yeah, so it's funny, and it's right. He's exactly right. Like that's just the names aren't as important.
And like you said, Sam, it's the performance. It's like, you get there, you haven't once you get there, you aren't done. You're just starting out. It's like I think I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of students, that look very promising as far as getting into the school, do they actually do the same amount of hard work when they get there? I think it's an
Mhm.
interesting question. Um I mean, for me, my high school experience was, I struggled with a lot of things. I struggled, first and foremost, academics were never the easiest thing for me. I have a lot of learning difficulties, mainly ADD. That's my big one. I'm still having trouble today, and I'm actually working actively on trying to improve some of the things that I still struggle with. The main one is reading comprehension. I have a really hard time with like fiction, and like I literally like I can read a chapter in a book and then like not understand what just happened. Like I really struggle with that. Um, so academics, that was a big thing, and math always killed me, and science, and basically the only class I ever really felt smart in was English, because I'd like to think I'm a decent writer, and I show up there and I kind of feel like, and even when I went to college the first time, I felt smart in that class, but every other one was just like really hard to feel like I was, a contributing member, and it was just challenging. And then socially, I felt like I didn't know who I fully was. And Sam, this might be interesting for you, because you remember when we met, I was SGA president. And that was a really great experience. One of the highlights of my time at that school. But there were a lot of challenges maybe that people didn't see behind the scenes of like, I felt as though I had this kind of image now of being a leader. And there's a lot of pressure that comes with how do you present yourself? I mean, I think like I I'm I'm typically a pretty goofy guy, and I like to like have fun and like let loose and stuff. But like other than a couple of really close friends, I felt like I kind of had to let go of that part of myself when I became president, because I was like I wanted to appear in a certain way that screamed leadership, and the way that I presented myself, and the way that I talked to people, and I was very formal. I often strutted around school in suits because I had some kind of meeting coming up, and I did like to dress up for those. But that was actually like it was one of the greatest times in my life, and also one of the hardest, because like it was tough. I mean, I took it really seriously, and not a lot of people before me did. And I think that some people, while at first they were excited for me, they started to think I took it too seriously. I think, maybe the expectations I had for the people I was working with in SGA, they thought that I was asking too much of them, and my grade kind of started to talk about me behind my back. I would find out, and um, they would say things about me, and not want to be my friend as much, and so it became very lonely. There's an expression, it's lonely at the top. And that's something I've reflected on since that time, because I loved getting to give speeches to the whole school. I loved getting to walk around in a suit, and I loved getting to have meetings with people. And I'm very proud of what I accomplished during my time in office. But I think, you know, maybe people who have different roles in the sort of social um, arena where it's like, oh, you're a jock, or you're a musician, or you're really smart. Like everybody, I mean, it sounds silly because I feel like the labels are stupid, but like I feel like there are these boxes maybe in high school, and like it's easy to kind of feel like pressure to stick to one thing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I talked about that. I don't know what episode it was, but I did talk a lot about like I've in high school until now, like I've never felt like I was in one box. I felt I was scattered in many different areas. Um, like I'm in drama club, but I also have softball, and like I am in environmental club. Like I have so many different areas that I'm in, which I love, but I always felt, you know, I'm in so many different things, and so I never had like one group. So I was always in different little groups, and there were times where I felt like maybe I should really just stick to one because, you know, then I have a dedicated one group that, you know, I could get really close with, and I'd have more friends that way. But I can never stick to one because my passions were always everywhere. And that's what I kind of like about high school, because there's so many different clubs and groups and sports that you can go into, but there's also a lot of pressure from the outside of, you know, people wanting you to stay to one, or, you know, commit to one and don't do the others. So it's always been, I agree with that. Like the boxes are a real thing.
And I just like, I wish I didn't care so much what people thought about me in high school, because that became a big thing. I was like, I wanted, I wanted to leave an impression, but you know, it's like, it's hard to be yourself and then, you know, please everybody. And then when you change who you are, people notice. It's like, it's so hard to just be you in a way that people aren't going to judge you, because people can be really judgmental. Sam, any reactions to anything I said or Lorraine said?
Yeah. We've really created a maze, and we find ourselves in different places in it, and it's complicated. And one thing I tend to think about sometimes is that, you know, we were in a school with 275, 300 students in total, K through 12 school.
Oh, yeah.
There are public schools near here who have twice that number of kids in a single grade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the 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 exponential increase of all these issues is just through the roof. And we saw this especially with COVID, which is why mental health is such an important thing to discuss. And you mentioned that you're taking a psychology class, and there's such a great deal of psychology in this. It's really quite fascinating that us as humans, we tend to judge from the second we meet someone, and most of the time it's subconscious. um, and we put each other into these boxes, and we use these schemas to define people, and it creates a false view of reality. And similarly to Lorraine, I don't feel like I'm in one box. um,
Mm.
and what else is interesting is that I've also, with the knowledge that how you act has to do with the box you are in,
Mm.
I've been able to, outside of school, in separate communities, separate populations, I've been able to start off in a different box.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then on the flip side, I know kids who started off on one box and they're now in a completely different box.
Mm.
And sometimes it wasn't always good.
Right.
Sometimes it was. But I think it's definitely a very malleable and changeable dynamic. But it is difficult for most people.
Wow. I'm wondering if you can elaborate. You mentioned something about outside communities, outside of school, maybe having an opportunity to be in different boxes out of school.
Yeah. I've thought about what I did and how I act to get into a certain box in school. And if I don't want that to be the case outside of school, for example, at a sleepaway camp, then I can I can change it, but it's a fine line you're walking because, at what point are you not acting yourself?
Mm.
Um, so I try to stay authentic, but they're little things we all do that people take note of, and they judge on that. And to what you were saying earlier, Bennett, about your time as the SGA president, you were a leader, and as the younger students, we looked up to you as such. Um, and the two heads of the upper school since then, not excuse me, the two SGA presidents since then, um, they might have been in all these different boxes or no boxes, but they continued that legacy. They take it seriously. Um, they've made changes. They just announced the other day the SGA. They're leaders, and I think they got that from you.
Wow. That honestly, that feels like an honor, man, because I think that's the one thing I was really proud of was, you know, I'm very blunt and in a respectful way as possible. I didn't feel, and part of what I was feeling when I ran in the first place was that people weren't taking it seriously before me. It was really a popularity contest. I mean, that's what it was. I mean, the person who made the funny speech always won, and then they got into office, and what got done, nothing. Oftentimes, the person who lost probably could have gotten things done. Um, but that's what I wanted to leave was like, um, you know, uh, be the change you want to see. I mean, I think we're all capable of it, right? You said that they're continuing to do things now in the SGA, and I'm really proud of that. I'm really happy to hear that the school I went to and I'm that I left, I could leave somewhat of a mark. That means a lot to hear it from you. I really appreciate that.
That is really incredible. I love that, Bennett made such an impact on your school and that people are following in his footsteps. I think that's really great. And I think he's a good person to follow.
Oh, thank you. What
You're
I'm just
welcome.
out of curiosity, what was you mentioned they were about announced they were doing something new, the current SGA, Sam?
Yeah, they changed some stuff in the handbook, or as they call it, the Constitution. Um, they're also that they're making changes to club names.
Mm-hmm.
They're making changes. I'm not a member of the SGA.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm a member of the student ambassadors, and it's an SGA organization,
Mm-hmm.
but only the head of it is on the SGA. Um, so I don't see what goes on behind closed doors, but they make the changes, and the head of the SGA comes up each week, and she will act like presidential, and remind students. I mean, you have ninth graders that are younger students, and everybody to stay on top of your work, um, mental health, X, Y, and Z, professional leadership at level advice, and I'm sure that they have learned from the people who came before them, because that's ultimately a large part of how we learn, from the people who came before us.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm that's actually so they do so mental health is mentioned
Yeah.
in your school. So what's like how much is mental health talked about in your school? I'm just really curious because I feel like this can vary on different schools. I know some schools implement it and they have a lot of mental health awareness. I know some schools who are lacking and not doing enough. So I'm curious how it is in your school.
Yeah, we have two full-time counselors in the high school alone, and that's not including the middle or lower school. Um, and there's a humongous emphasis on bullying prevention and staying safe online, and talking with people if you need to talk, and having all these fundraisers. And the way McLean is designed. It's designed as a ladder, going from lower school to middle school to high school, or for in most cases, just high school, and in a lot of cases, middle school to high school. And those students who were there in middle school go through the appropriate programming and training to have this awareness and the system that they abide by the time they get to high school. Like if you're in middle school at McLean, which I was, you've heard of the Pride Code of Conduct.
Yep.
I I got an award for that last year, so I know a lot about. I did. I got the Pride Award, they called it.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Very, very, very good acronym.
Lorraine, how does what Sam talked about compare to what they do at your school?
I think we can do more. If I want to be honest, I think I'm in student council. I'm not a president or vice president, but I personally think we can do more. I think there should be more open outlets for kids to open up anonymously if they want to, or just, I mean, we have 2 guidance counselors. I think they're great, but I think bigger schools who have more students, they might take mental health more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think in small schools, they just don't see the need for it maybe as much, which is unfortunate because it doesn't matter how big your school is or how much money you have in that school. Mental health should be prioritized equally. So I did a leadership conference last year. I was invited to it, and I was really happy to be in it because I heard from in my county so many different perspectives of students in schools who felt the same way. And they were in bigger schools too. They were in schools where they had thousands of kids in them, and they still agreed that mental health just wasn't a priority or not enough. So I think there needs to be some growth. I don't know what that would be for like programs or something, but I think there should be more.
Sam, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a little bit reversed with where the emphasis is placed. I feel that in larger schools with thousands of kids, there's less mental health awareness than there are at smaller schools, because the community and the population itself is so much bigger, and the money it has to be divvied up more. But I mean, I guess an analogy is that if you had, well, let's use small numbers. If you had a group of 10 friends, I feel that you would be more likely to be aware of their deeper emotions than if you were in a group of 100 kids. And I hear about it on the news that there's a school shooting here. There is something happened at this school, and this kid acted out and hit a teacher, and there's so many layers to it. A lot of it is what happens at home, but considering that most kids spend the majority of their days in school, I think it is essential that we put a huge emphasis on mental health, even bigger than we have, because how many suicides can be prevented?
Right.
How many shootings can be prevented? How many attacks? How many breakdowns? How many crimes? A lot of it can be prevented.
Right.
And we need to create the tools to do so. And a part of that is creating a culture where we can do so.
Right. And I think, a lot of that stuff happens, and it's always after the fact that they start implementing more things. It's never before. It's always something bad has to happen for them to start, taking it more quote unquote seriously. Because after those like main events, they're like, oh God, that can't happen again. And then they implement something, whether that sticks, that's, controversial, because, they'll keep a program for a couple months or a couple years and then they'll drop it.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
until something happens again. So I agree. I think there's a big lack across the board.
I think it was interesting hearing your kind of two different perspectives, guys, because I mean, I'm wondering too. I mean, we're all in putting things in perspective. We're all from pretty small schools. Whether Lorraine, your school's obviously a little bigger, but and then thinking about bigger schools. I mean, you know, the fact that none of us really know what it's like to go to a huge school, I think is interesting because if we were to be in those environments, maybe we would be able to see for ourselves what that's like. I will say that in our area, Sam, that we live in, I hear a lot more about suicides at the bigger public schools. And that's something that our county has had to deal with over the years. And I do wonder what it is. Is it that there's a lack of programming there? Is it the pressure that those environments create, whether it be going to public school in general in that area, or if it's the specific schools and how those teachers make the kids feel, or how the community environment is. I mean, I don't know. Anybody got thoughts on like why? I mean, again, Lorraine, this is our county that we're in, and
Hmm.
it's there appears to be, at least I've seen a much stronger level of crisis in the public school system we have than
Wow.
that of private schools.
Okay.
Um, in the 80s, uh, and I guess we could just say before now, um, the public schools around our county were considered to be some of the best in America, and they're still considered to be some of the best. But they do have these major problems that are coming out. Be it kids attacking other kids and teachers with various types of weapons, or drugs, fights breaking out every 10 seconds, um, bad fights. Um, but I have not done the research, but I think it would be worthy to research whether other counties of our size who do not have as much of an emphasis on mental health or the wealth our county has, I'd be willing to wager that they probably have it worse than we do. Um, and that due to the fact that we're in this bubble, we only see our own problems.
Right.
Um, but I that still does not change the fact that this is still happening. And I don't know. Um, I think like many things, it's nuanced and there's a gray area to it, and it's not for one specific reason or another, rather a plethora of reasons, be it social media, um, politics, the polarization in the country, world events, what's going on with your family, your friends, a growing public school population. Um, I think it could be many things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think there are so many factors, and as you said, Sam, I think you mentioned in the beginning that exponentially it's increased. I mean, the amount of, whether it be suicides or just the amount of times we hear about kids being depressed or being anxious, and whether or not they're lucky enough to overcome those issues, there's a real increase going on. And I think we've had this conversation with many guests across the season as to what that might be. We are in a bubble, and I think this applies to public school, private school, anybody in our age group. I think is it, it's like, I don't know if there's one thing to really attribute it to. I think maybe all the factors you listed, Sam, as to why you have what's going on at home, and then what you feel in the classroom, and I guess this increased level of violence. I mean, so many things happening. I guess if you guys let me know what you think, but I guess there's not really one specific reason why we are seeing such a rise in high school students facing extreme mental health challenges.
Um, I was listening to, I mean, I like to stay up to date with politics, and this politician was, well, I'm not going to bring up politics, like specifics, but this individual was saying, which I completely agree with, that we're at this inflection point in history where more change is going to occur in the next 10 years and has been occurring than what has occurred in the 50 years before. Um, and we are at this point in time where so much is changing so rapidly and it is so unpredictable. And if you couple that with the knowledge that we do a decent amount of our thinking subconsciously and our judging subconsciously, this takes an effect. This affects us. The feeling of not being in control of your life or things you are passionate about. The polarization in the country affecting kids, the social media, all the new technology, the
Right.
metaverse, so much is changing at such a rapid pace. Not only do I think we cannot keep up with it, but I think it's created a kind of a whirlwind, a tornado of just everything, and it's loud.
It's like, are we as human beings capable of handling all this change, right? Like, I mean, like you said, it is a whirlwind. It is a tornado. Um, I feels like the right time to mention. I wanted to bring up COVID because
I was just about to say that.
I think
Hmm.
that's you mentioned it
We
too,
should talk
Sam.
about that.
I have actually a list of very specific questions for both of you about. I mean, we're literally at the almost exact 2 year point of when COVID
Wow.
hit. Whoever wants to start, I imagine there's no one simple answer, but what was going through your mind? Think about 2 years ago today, just about when you knew this was coming, when you knew COVID was here, and school is shutting down.
I have a very prominent um memory. So um I remember I had my friend over. We had a sleepover. It was, I don't know what day it was exactly, but it was around March, around I think today. Um we were walking and we were walking outside just getting fresh air and we got a call from our school and they were like, we're shutting down for 2 weeks. And I think at first everyone was like, yay, no school for 2 weeks. Like, this is a really cool mini break that we're going to have. 2 weeks go by. We're still at home. This is freshman year. I was a freshman in high school, and my freshman year was at a halt. I was there from September till March, and then I didn't go back. We were home for the rest of the school year, and I didn't see that building until November of sophomore year. So it was insane because at first I was like, oh, 2 weeks, cool. We never got back, and it was insane. The news would be on, and you'd see the little specks of red blow up on different areas of the United States, and I'm like, oh my god, it's in my town. Like, this is not good. And those cases would just skyrocket. And like, New York is the epicenter of the pandemic now, and it's like, it was crazy. Like, New York City it was bad. It was bad.
Sam?
I think, I mean, it's not, I don't think, I know, we all know, it's self-evident that this is something that is unprecedented and hasn't happened in a very long time. And we're used to dealing with conflict, be it in our schools or on the international stage, that we can see, we can deal with it. At the beginning of it, I was thinking, this is straight out of science fiction.
Yeah.
I could not have imagined that this happening. This is the thing you read about in your dystopian novels, and it's happening. And I saw the red blowing up, as Lorraine said, on the map, but I also saw the rapid decrease of political acceptance and of civility, and it has affected us. And McLean has the tools needed. They had the tools needed to deal with what was happening. That they promptly invested in tremendous amount of technology, and we were able to have our end of year exams. We were able to get somewhat of a thorough education. But I'm hearing from other people, from my parents, from other teachers, that school is hell for so many people that they know, in underserved communities, in
Right.
humongous public schools. They're just not learning. And for us at private school, you hear on the news this was essentially a lost year for last year's students, and you, as a private school student, you think, wait, really? I got learning done. But to a lot of people, they did not. They were
Mhm.
quite literally isolated for a year, and it has taken a tremendous uh, toll. And but yet, at the end of the day, I still think this is one of those situations where you have two choices. Look at it as a glass half empty or glass half full. What can we learn from this? How can we improve from this? I talked about this with several people. We are so incredibly lucky that this was COVID and not something else, um, something more dangerous, something that really would have killed millions and millions and millions of people. And we need to view this as a wake up sign for our public health system, how we view democracy, how we act in our schools, our views on mental health. This all needs to be updated now that we're living in such a changed world, to be ready for the next time something this world changing occurs. And I brought up earlier, more change will occur in the next 10 years, 20 years than has occurred ever before. And I'm willing to bet that big things are coming, be them good or bad. And we need to be ready for it.
Right.
And mental health is a big part of that.
Absolutely. Lorraine, your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a world we haven't seen in a really, really long time. And I think it shocked so many people. And it, in many different areas, it allowed people to wake up and, implement things like for public school. I know you talked about this with your private school. We had school issued computers. We did the whole online thing, Google Classroom. Um, for me, I found it okay. I didn't suffer. I didn't struggle really with it. But underserved communities, how did they do remote learning? Where was that? Teachers, they were never taught how to do school from a computer. They never taught how do you teach students who are in 25 different locations, like how they were never taught that. So now they have to just at a flip of a switch, go from having the students in a classroom to having all their students in their rooms. And how do you command their focus? How do you get kindergarteners to sit on a computer for hours on a day? Like, that's hard. That's insane. um and so I think in a way it brought good things because we are flexible now with learning. So if anything happens again, I think we'll be more prepared in that regard. But I think it scrambled so many people um, with COVID, and mental health is so dire in those situations because we need to save our minds. With all this going on, up here is just as much important as your physical health. So there needs to be more emphasis on that.
Oh yeah. Just one more thing. My other main question about COVID, and I'm curious from both of you, an answer on how you felt and how you believe that your peers felt emotionally. I mean, I don't know if it's an obvious answer as far as how you dealt with the emotions of COVID, but really, I mean, it could be kind of interesting here. I mean, how do you guys feel that you dealt with the emotions of the fear and missing out on things and not knowing when this was going to be over, when your life was going to get back to normal, or as we've kind of seen the new normal, How do you think you dealt with it, and how do you think those around you dealt with it? Whoever would like to go first.
Regarding the fear specifically, um, I think we reacted how humans typically do with that flight or fight response. And some people fight it in various different ways, um, which which fighting it, the pandemic, the state of the world, your mental health can be a call for help in itself, and the flight part, the running from it, the breaking down from it, you saw it everywhere. Just fear in everybody, and I think deep down we all know that things are changing more rapidly than we can handle them, um, and it disproportionately affected, I guess, different personality types. I can say, meaning, those who are social butterflies suffered more
Yeah.
emotionally than those who are like, I have friends, but I can call them, don't really care, life will go on. Um, it's kind of hard to describe what happened because, like I mentioned, the whirlwind earlier, that was like the apex, the climax of the whirlwind. What was going on, and this confusion, we if one only needs to look at history to see what mass confusion can do. And that was a that was a great moment, a great example.
Lorraine,
Yeah.
you're a social butterfly, right?
I am a social butterfly. So when I heard you say that, I was like, that's exactly it. Because for me, it was really hard. Um, I was involved in so many activities in school. I loved being a part of things. I loved doing things with people. I loved being in big groups with people. And for that all to just, and a snap of a finger, go poof, it was it was a lot. And then on the flip side, there's people who absolutely were fine and maybe even enjoyed it. They were like, they in school gives a lot of people anxiety, social anxiety. Being in big groups and being in big group settings is hard for many people. And so I'm sure they liked, being able to do school from their room because they didn't have to constantly worry and have their hands tremble class after class because they're in a big group setting with kids. And so I think it was a blessing and a curse.
Mm. Well, I think that we touched on so many important things in this conversation, and I'd like to think that COVID, despite being such a big major part of the world these past couple of years, I'd like to think there's a lot of general things we touched on that I think apply regardless. But you know, considering COVID here, we kind of live in this new world. And like you said, Sam, I mean, to kind of wrap things up here with what you said about the world rapidly changing and knowing the kind of change we are going to face in the next 10 years or so. I mean, you have probably, Sam, 2.5 more years to go, Lorraine, about a year less. And I'm curious from both of you, how do you feel about your mental health as you navigate high school and with the world that we live in today? And how do you think it is to just, thinking about your peers in general, how do you think it is navigating the world we live in right now as a high school student when it comes to your mental health?
Um, I think Sam said this, but it's a maze, and I think some people get to the middle quicker than others. I think the maze can be it's hard to find your way. It's hard to navigate um being who you are, but also people telling you to be something else. It's hard. Do you want to be a leader or do you want to follow someone who may or not be the best influence? I think there's so many different pathways to go through that it's it's a hard environment for children. I think if you're in a public school, private school, small school, big school, it's a time for children, like if you want to say like K through 12, essentially developing yourself in an environment where there's so many different people and there's so many different perspectives and so many different views, and it's a lot of pressure. um I've been lucky. My maze, I think I've basically am at the center of it. I don't really have any issues right now. I've become very lucky with knowing myself and being comfortable with myself and not letting pressure or people's viewpoints really affect me as much. So I'm very blessed in that way, but I know a lot of people aren't as lucky and it takes them a while, even till college. I think we talked about this earlier, but you really see how people grow out of high school into college. Like they can be completely different people in college in a good way. You know, maybe they just, high school wasn't their time to really find themselves, and then they found themselves in college, and you see what they're doing, and like that's great. Like that's amazing. And then there's some people who are really doing well in high school. Like they got all the friends, they're at the top of the social food chain, if you want to call it, but then they're at college and it doesn't look like that anymore. So I think it's a weird transitional period, um, in high school or just in your lower school years in general.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning of the episode, I mentioned that that was my main source of anxiety. Where do we go from here? What happens when you're at a point in your life where the structure and order of things, structure and order being something we as humans crave, what happens when that starts to change and even go away a bit? And how do you handle that? And I'm a big proponent of the idea that we have more control over our lives than we like to admit, and that developing that growth mindset is important. But I mean, to put some perspective to that, who am I to talk? There are people who, in terms of mental health, are in such deep holes that what I just said, develop that growth mindset. You have control of your life, is just not really applicable at that time. Um, but I think the best thing one can do, and I can't even say that, the best thing I can do for myself is to arm myself with the tools I'm going to need to succeed, be it getting into the habit of asking for help from teachers when I need it, for going to those I need to talk to when I need to talk to them, from trying to stay positive, from trying to develop that growth mindset in hopes that it will help me down the road. Because maze really is the word, because life is not a road. It's not a straight path or even a curved path that leads somewhere. It can go anywhere, right? And I can't plan for the next 20 years. No one can. And all I can do is what I've done. And all I can do is try to make myself more able to handle the future, and to always keep in the back of my mind that there are people who support me and love me, and be thankful for that and use that. But speaking of less from my point of view, and this is a question I would pose to both of you, where do you go when you start off in such a hole? Let's say you don't come from much. Let's say you have issues at home. Let's say you have any X, Y, and Z of things. How do you handle the future without it being an already written story.
Wow. Lorraine, what's your answer to Sam's question?
I think those who are dealt with a hard hand, it's hard to see a lighter future. I think, the brain just goes, well, this is my life. This is what I've been dealt and given. The future's not going to give me anything better. So why try to change it? Why try to do anything? Yeah.
See that in so many people,
Yeah.
and even with, kids who are doing reckless things. Uh,
Oh, yeah. Because
we
then,
we
yeah.
we breathe in smoke every day. It doesn't matter if I vape, and
Yeah.
that's just a little example. They're
Right.
much bigger
They
ones.
they, they think, it's not going to get better, so, might as well do this. You know, do something worse because they don't see anything better. And I think that's sad because I think there's been very prime examples. I don't have names, but I've read vaguely like stories of kids who really turned their life around. They didn't let what happened at home, they didn't let, their circumstances they've been dealt, like, determine their future. They were able to get out of that. They were able to push through those, like, if you want to call it odds. And I mean, it's incredible. But I think it's so hard mentally to break past that fog. It's and but many people have done it. Once you like can push that fog away, you can see really clearly. And I think I wish more people saw what they're capable of changing their life to.
Wow. That was really powerful. Um, yeah, I think, like you said, Sam, it's hard to speak for someone else when you don't know their circumstances because we may be as blessed as we are, and somebody else listening may not have the resources in school if we want to talk about high school or, frankly, college or middle school, wherever they are in their life. And then at home, they may not have the support system that, we may have as far as having family to have your back or friends or whoever it may be. I think that when all seems lost, you have to figure out what you're going to look to for hope because I think we can't tell somebody one thing. People who are religious might say that God is the way to turn, or people who are simply spiritual and not religious may say that, just asking the universe for things to get better would help them. And I think that with varying socioeconomic backgrounds, I mean, I feel very strongly about wishing that therapy was accessible to all. The harsh reality is that it's not. And seeking professional help is something that, if you're lucky enough to have, you have it. It's not a guarantee. And I think at that point when, if we're kind of assuming the worst here, hopefully we're not having to go to the worst. But if you're somebody who simply does not know where to turn, I think I think you have to maybe look into yourself as far as what you're capable of, right? I think when you don't have others to rely on and all you have to rely on is yourself, I think it comes down to I am capable of finding the light. I am capable of finding a reason to want to live. I am capable of finding purpose in the world because regardless of what you've been through, doesn't define who you are. You hear incredible stories about people who overcome so much, whether it be poverty, a terrible home life, addiction, the most awful circumstances that make one think that their life may not get any better, but it can because we have the gift of life. And when all is lost, when all these little things that would make our lives better, may it be family, may it be more money, more support, more resources. When all of that is lost, when all those little things are things we don't have, we do have one enormous thing, and that is life. We have this one life that we've been given. And I think we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do with this life? Because no matter how much or how little money you have, no matter how many or few people you have in your life, no matter what you think you are capable of, you are capable of doing whatever you put your mind to and figuring out how you're going to get there. And we're all handed different cards, like Lorraine said, but no matter how long it takes to get to where we want to go, whether that means achieving a goal or pursuing a dream, or if we're in such a dark place that goal is simply just to get ourselves out of that hole, if that's the thing that we want more than anything, it's not even about finding a job. It's not even about finding love in your life. Even if it's just the simple act of figuring out how you are going to make yourself happy, I think it starts within yourself, and you have to tell yourself that you are capable and you can do it. And I think that when all is lost, we have to look to ourselves.
Amen.
Yeah. So I think we covered a lot of ground here. I'm wondering,
Yeah.
before we wrap up, any final thoughts from either of you?
I think for me, I know our big topic was, school and mental health. And I think the school environment is underrated of how important it is. You have children who have home life, and then they go to school and they're there for hours. And whether you're home life, for kids who have a hard home life, school is like their escape. They can go there for how many hours a day, and they're not at home. And for them, it's an escape. And I feel like that environment needs to be a positive, uplifting, safe, and comfortable environment for students, because that's how they're going to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they have most of their social life. That's where growth is lacking in the mental health department. That is seriously detrimental for children's mental health and their growth, physical, mental, emotional. That it's a really important environment. And so that's why I really stress that, whether it's us students who should enact change in their communities and in their school communities, or, petition for better mental health awareness. But something I think needs to be done, because like Sam was saying, a lot of unfortunate things are going on, and it should be a safe and comfortable environment for everyone.
Absolutely. Amen. Sam, any closing words?
Yeah. You said you said earlier that it's regrettable, but some people don't have access to that therapist. And I was thinking about that, and you know how, for example, if you can't get an N95 mask, you're going to go for the KN95 mask. If you if you can't get the paper towel brand you want, then get a different brand. It could apply to anything. I think that it's a similar scenario where if you can't get that therapist, but you need something, what do we do? And I think the answer, an answer to that, there could be many answers, is to change the culture. If we develop a life-affirming culture, an aware culture, a society where we care for each other in terms of mental health, that may not always be present in our actions because we're humans. We make bad choices, but if we develop a society where you could turn to your friend, your neighbor, and say, "How are you feeling?" And I think that can provide the help that some people so desperately need but cannot get. Which ultimately, at the end of the day, is why this discussion about mental health is so important.
Amen to that. Amen to everything. I mean, you know what? We have ourselves and we have each other. Like Sam said, we have each other, and no matter how alone you may feel, I think if we create that culture, we can find someone, we can find multiple people, we can find those around us who do understand us, who can tell us we're not alone. And I think, we strive to be a platform where you can listen and feel like you're not alone, because you really are not. And we hope that this conversation has helped you in some way. We hope that you've taken some things away from it. Thank you so much, Sam, for being on our show. Thank you guys for
Sam.
listening or watching. You can go to mentalhealthonthemic.com for everything you need to know about our show. Links to episodes to watch on YouTube or listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Google Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Mental Health on the Mic. Thank you guys so much. We will see you next time.